Hey guys, Dwayne Hickey here with In the Spread Fishing. It's the middle of May, post-spawn muskies on the skinny waters of the Collins River. We're several miles up from Great Falls Lake. Like I said, it's post-spawn. The tendencies would usually be spinnerbaits, bucktails, but we're going to try a little bit of shallow cranking also. I'm going to be looking at fishing a lot of weed beds. Anytime you have weed beds and wood connected with those weeds, you want to make extra cast on these fish. They're in here, they should be hungry, might even have a little action today. Well, I'm going to try to show you guys, and it'll apply to a lot of rivers throughout the South that's got muskies, especially these small, more clear rivers. We're going to burn our baits back. Fishing muskies, you know, the old saying is the faster you burn a bait, the more hits you'll get, but the less follows. This kind of makes the muskie have to make his mind up quickly to get after that bait or not. And it can be quite exciting. Might even throw a little top water this morning if I find the right opportunity. But I'm gonna get started here and try to help you guys understand a little bit about the river systems, especially the Collins River here. It's got really good numbers of fish. I think I'll start off with a SS shad, not a SS shad, but a AC shiner. So you want that lure coming up there shallow. These fish are in, the river's probably the deepest hole this time of year is probably about 10 to 12 feet. The fish will relate in and out of those deep holes, moving in and out to feed. Anytime you have deep water and it starts shelving up, you're going to find fish that move up on those shelves, up on the flats, the more shallower banks, to feed. Not that they're not in the deep holes, they are, but they move in and out of those deep holes. I'll start off with this AC shiner, but I'm sure I'll be going to a smaller type bucktail. I tend not to use the number 10 blades this time of year, but as the weather gets warmer and warmer, the water warms up more and more, we probably got mid 60s on the water temperature, mid to upper 60s. So the fish are definitely moving. They don't care to move fast. You'd be surprised at how fast the burst speed of a muskie is, upwards to 30 miles an hour. And also on these rivers in the summer, you don't necessarily have to concentrate all your efforts on casting to the bank. Sure, that's great. And you want to cast all the wood because muskies really love to relate to wood. But I catch a lot of fish right out in the middle because you're fishing over 4 to 10 foot of water. I tend to find that muskies in shallow water are more susceptible to hit. I think they get in these shallow water weed beds and they're looking for their food. It's a beautiful morning.
This type of stuff right here.
Yes.
This stuff coming up here. What is it that, do you like the way this wood is approaching the water?
Depending on the depth of the water, if it's basically if it's deep enough and there's a treetop like that on it, you want to fish the hell out of it. And like this area, there's weed beds all down through here, halfway out. Those muskies relate to those weed beds.
Is that where they're finding most of their food, in the weed beds?
That's where, yeah, a lot of the food are is in the weed beds, and they pull up nose up river, and they blend right in with that flat grass and that coontail. I mean, virtually you can't tell. you know, bait fish are susceptible just to swim right over them if they're sitting still.
So what are they typically eating in here?
They eat hog suckers, river shiners, sun perch, a few black perch, creek minnows, all of those are in here, the whole thing. So they've got 4 5-inch stuff to eat, and they've got 12 14-inch stuff to eat with suckers. And they love those suckers. But I found out that they also love to eat small. Small is in 4 to 5 inches. 4 to 5 inch stuff.
Because it's easier?
It's abundant in here, it's easier. You know, these schools of smaller bait, they're everywhere. So there's no reason for a muskie to like go hunting a black perch or a bass. With these black perch, they're excellent hiders. They pull up inside of the weed beds during the day. They can get in there and just sit. I think a lot of your black perch eat at night too. And you know, they're no dummies. They know the muskies are in here, so they hide. But then your soft rayed bait fish, they school up. They don't hide. So the muskie basically, when he starts getting the urge to eat, all he has to do is pull up beside one of these weed beds and wait. Because the fish will come by him. The fish will be there. He don't have to go far to get his bait. And they'll move throughout the day. They may be on a tree next to the bank a while, and then suddenly they're out in the middle of the river. I'm sure they tend to know where their food source is coming from. So,
Right here.
this is about 8 feet. Pretty consistent 8 to 10 feet for 100 yards. And the fish, like I said, you know, they may prefer this bank, this pile of weeds, that tree system, but they definitely move around from time to time during the day. There's a fresh beaver cutting tree. They always like to relate to wood, whether it's shallow, deep wood. Getting in position, either what I call their resting position for the day, moving around to a feeding position. But from about this time of year, all the way to, say, the end of June, and the rest of the summer actually, but I tend to try to lay off the muskie when it gets so hot. The Collins River here, it'll top out in the mid to upper 70s for the summer, which is not bad as far as hard on the fish, but then you also have to consider the air temperature and the heat. So when you're handling these things, you got to have all your ducks in a row. Be ready with your hook cutters, your pliers to get the hooks out. Don't hesitate to cut the hooks, as you don't want to catch fish and have him out of the water too long. They say not to have the fish out of the water longer than you can hold your breath. So that's what I adhere to. A quick release, maybe a quick picture, back in the water. If there's a log going down river, I want to try to bring a lure up beside it. And if I know where this log is and tendency is that there's a possibility there's fish on it. I want to come up beside it, and then I want to position my boat off to the left or right, and I want to come over it at least 2 or 3 times. Different angles can cause different results. But I like to look for brush, trees, logs that are out from rock banks separately, sitting by themselves, just a single log or tree. Fish it from different angles, like this one here. Now that's in about 8, 9 foot of water.
And you think that muskie would hang on that tree for what?
For cover. Muskies like hanging near cover. And truly, really, you don't ever really know where a muskie's gonna be, especially on this small system. Not a real wide river, pretty clear water, and it gets really, really clear. The guys ask me, wow, man, this all looks good. Where do you know, all you cast the banks. You look for opportunities out in the middle, and you make cast out in the middle, because they'll come up from 8 or 10 foot of water and just whack a lure, and you don't even know what cover the fish come off of sometime. I found that after spawn for a few weeks there, 2 or 3 weeks, I've had better success on the smaller bucktails than on the larger ones. And then around 1st of June, say, as far as this system, I'll start going to a bigger bucktail, really push that water, add that flash. It's pretty anti-high-tech fishing. This time of year, I could probably take 5 or 6 lures and feel confident that I've got pretty much all I need.
And you just pulling this out over weed beds right here?
I'm just open casting right here, but we're fixing to drop off into a short, deep hole. This is 6, 7 foot. We're gonna drop off into about 12 right here, but it goes from 6 to 7 to down to 10 to 12, and there's a ledge up here with weeds, and that's where they typically pull in. They'll pull in out of that deep water, stage up, and start looking for food. It's not like they swim around a bunch looking for food in this system. The food will basically come to them. They may rest in an area out of the deep water a few minutes. They may move around 50 yards until they find that spot to pull up where they can ambush their prey. Now I'm burning this bucktail in pretty fast, but I like to kill it. Killing it means just a quick pause, make it flutter, and then right back on the speed. You want to always be looking ahead of you for any top water action, any movement on the water. I'm basically just fan casting this shallower area as it leads into the deep water. With this slow flow, it does have flow, but it's fairly slow. They'll pull up right in the middle and look for food. What I call the flat grass and the coontail. And they love to stage up on it. They can basically pull up and be invisible to other fish that are swimming by, and then pounce when they're ready. Yes, this is right at the end of a deep hole. Fish have shade. Look, the leaf pile over there, logs hung up together. Perfect opportunity just for a fish to chill out in the shade. And then they've got just a few feet to move on this shelf that's just below me. We go from 12 feet of water, shelves up to about 5 feet.
What, it drops off right here in front of this lay down in the water?
So we're in deep, and right over there, it's 5 or 6 feet.
Right there?
Yeah. But you're right, people, first timers, you know, if you don't know a system, you start floating it. It looks good, it looks deep enough, start fishing. Don't think about, well, I'm gonna keep hunting until I find great looking water. A lot of these rivers, you're on great looking water really fast. 4 feet and deeper, the fish, they're gonna move in and out of that kind of water from their deeper holes. And a deeper hole in a 300 or 400 yard stretch is relevant. The deep hole might be 6 feet, 7 feet, and you know, and then for a good ways it may be 3 and 4 feet. So the deep hole don't have to be a 10 or 12 feet hole. Now we're out of that deep hole and we're in about 5 feet of water, maybe 6, and lots of weeds. So if you're fishing this kind of river system and you have weeds, you start seeing, you know, this river, it gets clearer and clearer. And I mean crystal clear at times of the year. Right now we have some color, which I like color. The fish can't make out exactly what's coming over their head or in front of them. But they see a flash, and that's what you want. You want vibration and flash. When you're talking clear water, you want to go natural baits if you can, such as that AC shiner, crankbaits that mimic bait fish that are in the system you're fishing. You know, black and silver, staple color. It's just staple as far as a crankbait. Muskies do like a little color. You know, I've had times when I'd go radical. It seemed like to me, I'd go from a natural looking bait to something with bright colors. And bam. You never can totally figure out what a muskie likes. You can get good ideas, but it does not hurt to change up and do something maybe totally stupid that you think, you know? Purple and orange, orange and black, red. I've even used pink. I don't tell everybody, but I've used pink. But typically, the clearer the water, the more natural looking the bait, the lure needs to be. Almost immediately, 24 hours, there'll be fish on something like that. And that's had, see the leaves stacked up against it. It's been down a week or two. And it offers shade all the way to the bank, cover all the way to the bank, extending out all the way to the middle of the river. Of course, you want to fish every spot that looks like this. So many places a fish can get in and rest, wait in ambush. Wow. Typical spot. You see a place like this, you just know there's something in there. You might not get him out every time, but he's there, and he's probably got friends. He may be on the front side of it, he may stage up on the back side of it. Woo. But he's there. Area like this, there's a fish there somewhere. On an area such as that, wait a little while, come back with a different lure. Go from a spinner type to a minnow type. Try different things. But at some point, you get a fish off a spot like that. And if you happen to know there's a fish or two in a spot like that, multiple casts and change lures. Change the size of your lures. People think that muskies hit and feed mostly large, not on a system like this. They may feed on a steak 1 minute, which is a 14-inch sucker. The next day they're feeding on creek chubs, 4 and 5 inches long. The head of an island. I always make casts at the head of any little island, because your water comes from a little deeper and it gets shallower and shallower, and that's current will push bait right to a fish. So anytime you see these areas, cast that middle. And the muskie may be down there relating to absolutely nothing. Just a smooth bottom, but it's the location that makes all the difference. That current, say in the case of this island, pushing the food right to them, and they'll sit motionless. And they can run out and get their food. All right, crank up and get past this island. I don't let them swim long. Once I detect the hit, not more than a few seconds, and then You know you're gonna lose some fish that way, not get a good hookup, but it sure as heck beats letting the fish gut hook a minute. I don't do that.
How you hook that thing?
I go through the bottom and the top lip. That bait's big enough to be seen. That's all it takes. It's an easy, easy meal. Down treetops, in deep water, there's always a fish to be caught there. There's a good looking top. Sorry. Four and a half inch creek chub. And guess what? Fish hits that, it's all in its mouth. You don't have to let that fish run. Very, very short amount of time. Seconds, not minutes. And I either use a circle hook or I'll just use a good stout, fairly wide gap hook. Free line him out there around these good looking spots. Watch the line. It's a deep hole. Okay guys, floating down this river, of course I'm on the Collins, the upper Collins, and this can apply to any river in the south, any river basically where there's muskies. I've come on this bend, on the outside bend, and we got slow flow. With that automatically will tell you you're in some deeper water, deep from, we're talking 8 to 12 feet. So bends of river, inside or outside edge, I tend to fish the shady part. I'll target that first, but you want to target these bends. They'll just about always in deep water like this on a good sharp bend, there's going to be 1 or 2 fish that'll pull up and make this basically their home area, and they'll roam and they'll come back to their little home area. But if it looks good like this and it's slow flow, there are fish here. So you want to target these fish. Like I said, it's the middle of May. I tend to think bucktails And even in deep water, you want to burn them. You don't want to let that buck, I don't let my bucktails go down deep. I try to bulge them and make that fish come up and get it. You know, their eyes are at the top of their head and they're basically looking up at an angle. So bulging a bucktail, running a shallow water crank, such as an SS shad, this sucker will run 12 inches deep and you can make it bulge water. Really wide wobble, smoker tackle, man. They make some great lures. You want to fish these areas slow. If you got a motor and you're motoring down and you're floating down, fish an area like this inside bend or the outside with one or two. If there's two guys, have a blade on, have a crank on. If you have no action and you're coming back upriver, change to a rubber, a paddle tail, a bulldog. Change your lures. Time in a day is always critical for muskies. You never know what these suckers are going to do, so I like to try to put the odds in my favor. By that I mean, if you've got a moon rise or a moon set, it's a good time to be on one of your favorite spots. This is a spot. You see logs like this, which I've raised many fish off this log. That's what I'd call the spot on the spot. And anywhere up above or below it, you want to make multiple casts, multiple casts. To just fish it slow and take your time. If it looks fishy, there's fish there. So we're going to continue. I'm going to continue down this long bend, and it's going to turn into bluff rock, and it's going to get deeper. And you'll see logs on one side and rocks on the other. On a lot of river systems, you've got your mud bank, your rock bank. And they tend to like to hang on those logs, but flow will affect where they'll be, even in a slow flow like this. If you've got a log and you've got a little bit of current going over it, and that log is off the bank in 7, 8, 10 foot of water, multiple casts. Do multiple casts and change lures. This is river fishing, so you want to pound the banks. This stretch for miles, there's really there's no bad fishing. I'm on a stretch here that I've known for years, but if you're a first timer and you're floating this, guys, don't float it, don't just whiz by it. Keep your trolling motor on. In my case, I use a paddle and my 4-stroke, but slow down and take your time. And if you got cloudy weather in the summer, keep an eye on your rod. Keep that rod always pointed toward your lure, because just off to the side a little, you're losing hook setting ability. Rod pointed toward lure, I use 80-pound test tough line. When that fish hits, man, I've got optimum hook setting ability, because my rod's always pointed toward that lure, no matter what I'm using. And keep that in mind. Change lures. Don't use the same lure. If I'm ahead of you 2 or 3 fish to nothing, I might give you one of my lures that I'm catching those fish on. Other than that, change lures, change them up. So I'm gonna go down through here and see if I can raise something off these rocks or the logs. And then I'm gonna work my way back up and spot hit. Now the moon set at 5:39 this morning. So we've got basically clear skies, a little tougher conditions. You guys have ever musky fish, you know what I'm talking about. But hey, you're out here fishing, aren't you? And that's what it's all about. All right, I changed to a spinner bait and I put a live minnow on it. Take off, baby, full of energy. 3rd cast. And he nailed it. Ah, did you see that?
Oh yeah.
That's a pretty nice fish. That's a live chub on the back of a spinnerbait. So you never know. Change baits, try different things. I don't get upset anymore when I lose a fish. sunny bank, deep water. He came right off a tree and nailed it. Get the lure out of the net. So, it looks like spinner baits. That's 2 hits in the last 10 minutes. Suddenly, no action before now. Easy girl. Handling a muskie. Be careful. Be careful. Not only will the teeth get you, the gill plates will get you. But that's a minor thing. A lot of the guys say that's a badge of honor if you get a little cut on your fingers. So you want to come under that gill, find that soft tissue, pinch with your finger and your thumb, pull her up for a quick pick. Nice little river muskie. 35, 36. Spinner bait. We've changed from bucktails to crankbaits, and then we're kind of slow rolling spinner baits. We're speeding them up, we're rolling them, we're killing them, letting them go down a little bit, and then antagonize the strike. So there was a strike. Good little Collins River muskie. Put it back in the net, and then we're going. And this fish came off deep water, really deep hole. Right now, probably 11 or 12 feet deep. Came off wood. We're always targeting wood, shallow or deep water. If it's deep enough, if it's knee deep, you've got a chance of a muskie hiding in or around that log, those limbs. But this came out of deep water. We're gonna let her go now. Thanks for the fight, girl. All right, we just caught that fish in deep water, right at the end of a long, deep stretch of calm water, 10 to 12 feet. And now we're coming up on, see this thing shelving up here from 10 to 12, it's 3 foot of water. The muskies like to pull in and out of that deep water. Look for this kind of stuff, guys. Shallow to deep, deep to shallow. And don't be surprised if you catch a fish in something like that right out in the middle of the river, any river, because that's where they pull up to look for that food. This fish was back there resting up against a log, but he still hit. Why do they do that? Good question. The important thing is that he did hit. You fish these areas, you pound your banks, running different lures until you get action. Well, that, like I said, that's 2 fish in 10 minutes after nothing all morning. So we're going to continue down a shallow stretch now, 4 to 6 foot of water, and see what happens down here. See if the same pattern works. So it looks like spinner baits are going to be the trick for this particular trip. Next trip, a week later, they may be hot on bucktails. They may get hot on bucktails before this day is over. They could switch to crankbaits, try different things on different fishy looking spots where you really got that feeling, hey, this is a good looking spot. I need to hit this a couple more times and change my tactic. It may be you change your retrieve rate. You may let a lure go a little deeper. But typically I keep everything up shallow on this river. I want them to come up and get it. So let's see how this shallow water works out here for us. And then we'll get back up in some deep water. Okay, earlier we were on the outside bend, the shady bend, more rocky. We fished down. Seemed like we were getting a bite on spinner baits, had a couple. And now we're on the sunny bank, the mud bank. Casting logs, 10 to 12 feet of water. and we're on the inside bend. Seeing if we can get anything up that way. I'm gonna stick with spinnerbait. 2 hits in 10 minutes. So no need to change right now. It's a little past mid-morning. The hotter it gets, the less action you'll have. But right now we got water temperatures in the mid-60s, so really you could have action on and off all day. The right cast over the right fish kind of thing. But these areas, these bend areas typically will hold 1 or 2 really nice fish. All right, guys, I've floated down, working my way back up, and I was wanting to talk to you a little bit more about bluffs. You know, I talk a lot about mud banks and logs, great fishing areas, fish them all. And I'm asked a lot about, what about these bluff banks, especially on deeper water? Yes, I mean, fish are not all on the mud banks. They'll be on the bluff banks too, but when you pull up on a situation like a tree on a bluff bank that extends out into deep water, you want to fish those areas multiple casts, because this bluff offers shade. The tree extending out into water, they can suspend directly under the tree, or they could be on the bottom under the tree. So you want to make multiple casts, and also you'll float over some deep structures, some deep logs. You may mess it up if you're a first timer or whatever, but remember that spot and get off to the side of that and cast over these deep logs. They may be out in the middle of the river. Remember where they're at, mark that spot. Come back a little later and hit those spots with multiple casts. Spinnerbaits seem to be the thing that's worked for me today. It's usually either a spinnerbait, a bucktail, or shallow running crankbait. And I do throw in rubber baits such as a U-boat, shallow bulldog, paddle tail. I will occasionally let these, the paddle tails especially, I'll rip them off out of deep water holes, rip, let it sink, rip, let it sink. That's most of the time after I've exhausted my spinnerbait, my shallow running stuff. Remember, we're fishing clear, small rivers here. The Collins River is not a big river when you get up in skinny water. You don't have to fish the bottom, guys. These fish will come up and get these lures. I bulge a lot of my baits. I like to make them disturb the water as much as possible near the surface. And that usually pays off for me. Had one rip on a spinnerbait with a 4-inch chub on the back of it. I do that sometime in the spring. It offers that live bait. There's something about live bait, no matter what you're talking about, what kind of fish. Fish love live bait. We try to mimic that, but in the world of musky fishing, change it up. Don't be afraid to experiment, try stuff, different stuff, wacky stuff. And you'll be surprised at what you can catch, especially on these little rivers. It's just a great way, especially for first timers. I mean, you won't get a more prettier river than the Collins River, no matter where you go. And there's rivers like that in Kentucky, West Virginia. They all have fish on them. This is my home waters, fished it for years. But these little techniques that I've showed you, there's going to be some more. You'll see me later in the year using big bucktails, maybe some big crankbaits, and definitely some top water lures, because nothing like a top water hitter on musky. So I'm going to keep on fishing here a little bit more, and if I can think of anything else that would relate to post-spawn late spring fish, I'm going to share it with you. I'm going to share some other stuff to you as we go along. There'll be some catfishing. There's gonna be a little everything. Walleye, always musky. Don't ask me why. They're crazy. They're the fish of 100 casts. Some people said 10,000. I can probably do it in 100 or two. But I'll be talking to you.